prayer. Let us put ourselves to the holy presence of the Lord. Our most gracious and loving Heavenly Father, we come to you today with gratefulness and thanksgiving in our hearts. Thank you so much, dear Father, for all the blessings you have showered upon us. Thank you for giving us all the opportunities to study and to continue to survive amidst this pandemic. Thank you, dear Father, for giving us the gift of presence of each and every one of us. Thank you for always providing us all the provisions that we need in order to survive. As we begin our lesson tonight, dear Father, we invoke your presence in our midst. Give us more strength, give us more wisdom, give us the gift of discernment so that we will be able to internalize and understand all the lessons that will be discussed tonight. Dear Father, bless the students that they may be able to interact, to respond, and to participate actively in our lesson. And I also pray that these lessons that they will be learning today will be internalized and that they will be able to make use these new things that they will gain from tonight's lesson as they continue their life as a student and hopefully as a professional someday. Forgive us, dear Father, for the many sins we have committed against thee. We also pray for those who are still not here with us, who plan to join us tonight, that they too will be able to connect with the internet so that they will be able to participate in our lesson for tonight. We bring back to you all the honor and glory in the mighty name of the Lord Jesus Christ, who lives and reigns with you in heaven. The Holy Spirit is one God, now and forever. Amen. So again, a pleasant evening to one and all. Attendance check, there are 10 people who have already joined in our class for tonight. And while waiting for the others, let me present to you my PowerPoint. Okay, so let me just, okay, so open system preferences. Okay, so now I am, okay, I'm still checking my PowerPoint. So I don't know why. Okay. Share. Can't share your screen. Google Chrome might not have permission to use screen recording. Okay. So what should I do? I think there's something wrong because I haven't. Okay, this is my first time, as I told you, to make use of this. So open preferences. Okay, so this is my first time to use it. So I'm really, okay. I apologize. Will not be the recording of the subject until it is quit. Hello, everyone. I'm so sorry. I'm lost. As I told you, I'm still, um, this is my first time to use my new laptop. So I'm still figuring out the privacy settings. And this laptop has a very, very strict privacy setting. So I need to figure out. And I'm just thankful that I'm able to figure out. Okay. So have you seen my, can you see my presentation now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you so much. Maybe not in full screen yet. So maybe I need to adjust this into full screen. Okay, I hope you can see it now. Can you see it?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay,
Yes,
thank
sir.
you so much. So we are now on lesson 8. I do not know. I need to, wait a moment. I need to, is it still recorded? Okay, so it's still recorded. Okay, thank you so much. I think it's not recorded. So this is lesson 8, and this is actually lesson 1 for the pre-final. And tonight, we're going to talk about rhetorical situation. Okay, so I know that sooner or later you will be delivering speeches, and actually part of the requirement for this particular lesson and module is for you to be able to come up with your own speech. You have to deliver your own speech, and I think as a teacher, it is very important to be able to develop our skill in speaking, because it is through our ability to speak that we will be able to translate our abstract ideas into meaningful lessons. And I think as a teacher, we need to have this kind of ability. So let me present to you the objectives of my presentation. So one objective is to compare and contrast the different modes of delivering a speech. Okay, so we have different types of speeches, so we need to distinguish each of them and deliver effectively a message to an audience. So be it online or face to face, we have to learn the tips on how to develop or how to deliver speeches. Okay? So there are different types of speeches according to purpose. What are these? One is informative, another is persuasive, and the third is argumentative. So let us discuss each type of speech according to purpose, one at a time, starting with informative. So what is informative? When you talk about informative, let me just accept Jeremy. Okay, let's go back to my presentation. So when you talk about informative, it involves giving than asking. So as an informative communicator, you want your receivers to pay attention and understand, but not to change their behavior. Because the purpose of informative speech is just to provide information to others. So, for example, when you are giving announcements, so that is one way of giving informative speech. Okay, so just giving information. There is no other purpose of this speech than to give information, to share knowledge. Okay, so according to Osborne in 2009, informative communication arises out of three deep impulses. One, we seek to expand our awareness of the world around us. Okay. Another, we seek to become more competent. And the last is we have an abiding curiosity about how things work and how they are made. So, why do we engage in informative communication? Definitely, it's one reason is to expand your knowledge about everything, right? So normally, the casual conversation that we have, it could be an informative if you are giving information to others. Simply, the purpose is to give information and nothing else. Just we want to be competent in speaking, so we want to share whatever we learn or whatever we have to other people. And also, we are curious how things work and how they are made. So it's either that we are sharing or we are getting information. So that's the purpose of informative communication. So in preparing for an informative exchange, ask yourself the following questions. So these are the questions that we need to know or we need to answer when we are giving an informative speech. One, is my topic worthy or noteworthy to be considered informative? Second, what do my recipients already know about the topic? Third, what more do they have to know? And the last, am I knowledgeable enough of my topic to help my receivers understand it? So these are the things that you need to bear in mind when you are preparing for an informative speech. So first is you have to know first specific topic. What topic do you think is really important nowadays? Do you think people still want to hear about COVID-19? I think people are already fed up or exhausted or probably tired of hearing COVID-19. So I think COVID-19 is no longer the best topic for us to share this time of the pandemic. But probably business ideas. Maybe many people would like to learn about what type of business is popular or what type of businesses are popular during this time of the pandemic. So that one topic can be important, right? Or probably the most popular plants which are collected nowadays. It can be a topic that will interest most of us. And also, what do my recipients already know about the topic? So if you want to share a topic that has been circulating online already, for example, COVID. COVID is a really, it can be a very popular topic nowadays, anything about COVID, right? However, many people already know about the topic. So what about COVID that is still new that others would still find informative? So you have to think about that and probably understanding what the receivers or what the listeners already know about the topic. But you have to make sure that you are knowledgeable about the topic, because if you are not knowledgeable about the topic, you will not be able to share new information, new ideas, and new insights to your listeners. So that's very, very important. Second, speech that we need to learn is persuasive speech. What is this persuasive speech? So persuasive speech is an art of gaining fair and favorable considerations for our point of view. So it provides a choice among options. It advocates something through a speaker. It uses supporting material to justify advice. It turns the audience into agents of change. It asks for strong audience commitment. It gives importance to the speaker's credibility. And it appeals to feelings and has higher ethical obligation. So which means that if you plan to persuade others to believe in your ideas, there are so many things that to be considered in a persuasive speech. First, there must be options, okay? So for example, if you want to talk about worthwhile hobbies or worthwhile activities during this time of the pandemic, so if that is your topic and you want to persuade them to do productive or worthwhile hobbies, then you have to provide them options. I think this is the best way for us to persuade our, our classmates or other people to engage in worthwhile activities. And of course, the choice among options, that's very important, a choice among options. And it advocates something through a speaker. So which means you are the advocate of the topic that you are presenting, okay? Uses supporting material to justify advice. So it's very important that you have plenty of supporting material. So it's not enough that you can present, a PowerPoint presentation, but you should have plenty of ideas. You should have plenty of references to justify your advice. So your advice must not only be self-advice. It must not only be something that you think about. It can be something that you read from a news article, or it could be something that you have watched on TV. So something that can be justified. So it must be something that has a solid ground or that has a solid reference. Turns the audience into agents of change because your purpose here is to make them believe you and to make them follow what you are saying. So therefore, it appeals to the feelings of others. And it asks for strong audience commitment, gives importance to the speaker's credibility. That is why if you are planning to conduct or to provide or to give persuasive speech, you must be first a believer of what you are sharing. So for example, if you are promoting a product, for example, make sure that you are a user of that product. It's so difficult to promote something that you are not even doing it, right? So for example, if you are also telling others to engage in a worthwhile activity or in a worthwhile hobby, you must have a worthwhile hobby yourself first. Because without a worthwhile hobby, your audience will not be able to believe and to see through what you are saying. So therefore, they can see it to you. If you are saying that you want to study well or you want others to study well, you must be an example or an epitome of a good student. First, you should have proven at least that you are worthy of emulation, worthy to be followed. That is why it has higher ethical obligation because it's so hard to provide or to give a persuasive speech just by saying, follow what I say, but do not follow what I do. So first, you have to be a model yourself for you to be able to convince others to believe in your cause. So the last type of speech, according to purpose, is argumentative speech. And it says here it relies heavily on sound proof and meaning. According to Aristotle, it consists of three primary forms of proof that you can use in an argumentative speech. One is logos, another is ethos, and third is pathos. So when you say logos, it appeals to logic, means convince the audience by use of logic and reasoning. Okay? So for example, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. You cannot achieve your dreams unless you start in single achievable steps. That can be logical, right? It's logic. Another is ethos or ethos. Ethical appeal means to convince an audience of the authority, credibility of the character. So, which means that if you are trying to argue that education is the only way for us to be able to improve ourselves or to bring goodness to your life, then you must be credible speaker. When you talk of credibility, you must be first an example of what you are saying. It's so hard to say that education is, is a way or is our ticket to success if you are not even educated yourself, if you have not experienced being educated. So therefore, when you say it, you have to walk your talk. Okay, so walking your talk is very important here. And that is one of the credibility of the speaker. However, in ethos, you can also make cite authorities with credible character as your examples. So probably if you want others to believe in this particular argument, you must provide them solid proofs. And these solid proofs should be taken from experiences of other people who become successful, who have become successful because of education. So you can also, cite credible sources. And the last would be the pathos. Emotional appeal means to persuade an audience by appealing to their emotions. Okay, this is probably something that I have seen in the recent beauty pageant that I watched. I know many of you have watched Miss Universe Philippines, and most of the girls can speak really well, right? They are articulate. They can speak, very, very well. So they are good speakers. They are spontaneous. But what makes one candidate really stand out among them all, or what made one candidate stood out among them all, was her ability to appeal into the emotions. And that happened to be our new Miss Universe Philippines, because she did not just speak with conviction, but she was able to draw out her answers from her personal experiences. And she was able to appeal to the judges. I think the delivery really plays a very important role here. You are not just articulate in delivering your speech, but you have to make sure that you can connect to the audience. So I think connection is very important if you are a speaker. And that you can only achieve if you have eye contact. So eye contact is very important in our speakers. I mean, for our speakers, to make sure that you can connect to the audience. So that's very important. So there are 3 forms of proof that we can use in argumentative speech. Again, one is logos. We use logic, okay? Another is ethos or ethos. We appeal, it's ethical appeal in convincing audience of the authority, credibility, or character by making use, by you as an example, as a credible speaker, or make use of other credible people or personalities to provide proof or to support your argumentation. Or the last is the pathos. And the pathos is more of the connection that the speaker can bridge through the audience. So if you have this kind of characteristics, or if you have these characteristics in you as a speaker, you would be able to translate your argument into something that the audience would believe in. And I think as what you call this, as a debater, it is very important to have argumentative speech. You have the ability to engage in argumentative speech, and also with persuasive speech. So I think there are 3 types of speeches that you need to focus on. One is the informative speech, another is the persuasive speech, and argumentative speech. If you want to win in an argument, of course, it's very, very important. So which speech do you want to use when you deliver your own speech? Have you already chosen here from the 3 speeches? Do you think you are good at just giving information? Are you good at persuading others to believe you? Or are you good at argumentation? So you have first to identify your strength, because only in identifying your strength, you will be able to more or less capitalize your skill in delivering a speech. So first you have to know, because not all persons have the ability to argue. Not all persons have the ability to persuade, and not all persons have the ability to inform others. So therefore, you have first to identify your strength. And if you are strong in that particular speech, then you can capitalize on your strength, and you can use that in delivering a speech. Because right now, in your module, which will be shared on Thursday, you will be delivering a speech according to your choice. So right now, and that is your performance output for the pre-finals. So I hope right now you have decided already which speech you would like to use in your delivery of the performance task. Okay. Now, to avoid argumentation or defective argumentation, we need to avoid defective evidence, okay? Misuse facts, statistical fallacies, defective testimony, inappropriate evidence or defective patterns of reasoning, evidential fallacies, slippery slope, confusing facts with opinion, flawed proofs, and defective arguments. So these are the types of errors or flaws that we need to avoid for us to be able to ensure effective argumentation. Okay. Now let's move on to the second topic that we will be discussing tonight, is public speaking. Okay. So what is public speaking? When you talk about public speaking, we can relate this to a process of speaking in a structured, deliberate manner to inform, influence, or entertain an audience. It is a speech used to refer to the body, spoken expression of information and ideas. Okay? So have you seen people deliver a speech, the purpose of which is to inform, to influence, or to entertain an audience? Then you are doing public speaking. I do not know if you have watched, I think you have watched a sample. I don't know if you have watched a video on TED. Are you familiar with TED? TED is an organization that it's a non-profit organization actually, and their purpose is to share ideas, is to spread ideas worth sharing. So if you are fond of watching videos on YouTube, please do check TED videos because you can get a lot of wisdom, a lot of learnings from TED videos. And that is a very good example of public speaking. You will see there international speakers gave lectures on various topics. And these various topics of interest are really, really nice. And you can learn a lot of lessons from there. So check them out if you have time. So there are different kinds of speech according to delivery. So earlier, we learned about 3 types of speeches according to purpose, right? To inform or informative, persuasive, and argumentative. Now we are going to learn speeches according to delivery. And there are 4 types of speeches according to delivery. One is a read speech. I think from the word itself, you know already what is a read speech. Second, memorized speech. Third, impromptu speech. And extemporaneous speech. Okay? Now, let's first discuss what is a read speech. If you say read speech, what does it mean? When you say read speech, it means reading from a manuscript is a manner of speaking where a written speech is read and delivered word for word. Actually, I remember when I was in Japan, every time we were asked by our professors to deliver a speech in Japanese, we always have a copy of our speech and we just read everything word for word in our speech. This is appropriate when one is asked to deliver a prepared speech on behalf of another speaker. Di po ba, if your principal, for example, someday would not attend the program and he has prepared a speech for that program, you can deliver the speech on behalf of the principal. So you can read it word for word or in toto, right? That is also one way. Or when the speech is long and when details are complicated and essential such that they need to be given completely, you should have a read speech. Also, when you are delivering in a convention, in a conference like WHO, what else? DOH, for example, UN conferences, UNESCO conferences, I think ASEAN, for example, when speakers deliver speeches in those gatherings, they always have read speech. And also during ceremonies, like graduation ceremonies. So it's very important to have a read speech there. Why? Because the event is solemn, the event is formal, and therefore there is no room for cracking jokes probably, or there is no room for ad-libs. So if that's the case, then a read speech is really applicable. So which means that read speech is not totally bad because, as I mentioned, this is used in certain occasions. That is why it's very important for you to be able to know which occasion you would be attending. Would I be allowed to have a read speech in a graduation, for example? Is it good to have a read speech? Yes. If you are delivering an inspirational message, a read speech can also be applied. But of course, there are times also that read speech is not applicable. That is why we have to look into the limitations of a read speech. So its weakness is that the force, naturalness, and eye contact may be diminished because the eyes have to travel from page to the audience and vice versa. That is why when you read a speech, you can really tell, you can really feel that the emotions are lacking, sincerity is lacking, naturalness is lacking, force is lacking. It's because you have to focus on what you are reading at the same time to look at the audience. So your attention is divided. And also sometimes if you are not so good at reading, if you have not practiced your speech, then some of the words there might not be so familiar to you, so you have difficulty in pronouncing them. That is the weakness of a read speech. Okay, now let's move on to the second type of speech according to delivery. The second type is memorized speech. A memorized speech is written speech, which is mastered and delivered entirely from memory. This is the kind of speech requires the speaker a considerable memory skill in order not to forget his or her presentation. This method is excellent for short messages, although it is also used for long pieces in oratorical, declamation, and other literary contests. So memorized speech is very important. I think many of graduates, like for example, if they are valedictorian, for example, and they would be assigned or tasked to deliver a speech, most of these valedictory addresses are actually memorized speeches. So as you may have noticed in the delivery, it's memorized. Why memorized? Why is it important to memorize? Because if you read it, it's still okay to read it, but memorized speech will have more opportunity to deliver the speech in a more relaxed way, in a more natural way, in a more spontaneous way. And I think with memorized speech, you would be able also to incorporate all the essentials that you wanted to say in your speech. That is why it's very important to have this kind of speech. But one weakness, just like the read speech, memorized speech also lacks naturalness, and to forget the lines and to fail to shift smoothly to another mode of delivery can be a problem. Have you noticed that when you memorize a speech and you forget one word, it's so difficult for you to transition to the next paragraph? Why? Because your mind already has been conditioned that if this word is there, it would be easy for you to continue. However, if that word is missing, your mind still struggles, or your brain still struggles with the next word or the next paragraph. So that can be a real challenge for memorized speeches. Unlike with the read speech, that you have everything there, all you have to do is just to read it according to the sequence. But with memorized speech, it can be a test of memory. If you are really good at memorizing speeches, then it would be best for you. But if it is not, then I would rather suggest that read speech would be good for you. Although, between the two, I consider memorized speech better than read speech in as far as it looks more natural and spontaneous compared to the first. Now, the third type of speech, according to delivery, is impromptu speech. What is an impromptu speech? This is the speech where the speaker develops his or her ideas, thoughts, and language at the moment of delivery, speaking to spur of the moment. It may not deliver the best thought in the best way, but it brings out the most natural thing to say at the moment. One best example of impromptu speeches is the Q&A of beauty pageants, right? I think you have watched Binibining, or not Binibining Pilipinas, but Miss Universe Philippines. So they had first interview, and they also had final Q&A during the coronation night. So maybe you have seen the ladies deliver their speeches. That's the spur of the moment. They didn't have enough time to process the question or to think and organize their thoughts. The question is thrown at them and they answer it spontaneously. So you see, if you are not really that quick in organizing your thoughts, you would not be able to give a very strong and solid answers. That is why, as you may have noticed, some of the candidates were kind of beating around the bush because it's so difficult and you cannot really underestimate them, because if you would be put in the same situation, I think you would also experience the same dilemma or the same problem. You would have a hard time organizing your thoughts. That is why it is very important to always look for the keywords. That's the advice of Boy Abunda in one of the interviews that he had with the ladies, with the beauty queens, that when you're answering impromptu speeches or when you're giving impromptu speeches, it's very important for you to have keywords. Use your keywords as your guide, as your outline in delivering your speech. If you have those keywords with you intact, and I think it would be easy for you to memorize keywords, it would be smooth and spontaneous. Believe me, that is one of the best advice or pieces of advice that probably you should remember when you are delivering impromptu speeches. Okay? So this is the weakness of impromptu speech. Since there is very minimal or no time for preparation given, the content and organization of ideas may suffer. In most cases, as you may have noticed, some of the candidates were playing safe. They just answered very short responses because they don't want to go away with the topic. The longer, it's like the more you say, the more errors you commit. The longer your sentence is, or the longer your paragraph is, the more mistakes you would commit. That is why the shorter your answer is, the better. And since the time for preparation is very short, plus the pressure that you have because you are facing the audience, I think the more that you will suffer in as far as the delivery is concerned. That is why impromptu speeches can only be more or less perfected by people who really have the confidence in speaking and who have a lot of experiences in public speaking. Because if you would be asked a question that is not familiar to you, definitely you would not be able to answer in an impromptu speech. And I think it has happened in many instances with our beauty pageants now across the country and across, even in the world. So you can see a lot of candidates not being able to answer a single sentence to the question being asked, or not being able to give sort of logical explanation on a given topic. Why? Because they don't have the experience, they don't have the knowledge on the topics asked. And because of that, your explanation, your answer, your argumentation will also suffer. And the last here is the extemporaneous speech. So we have impromptu speech, like in beauty pageants, you are asked and then you answer. That is impromptu speech. What is the difference between extemporaneous speech and impromptu speech? In extemporaneous speech, this is the speech where the topics or ideas are prepared beforehand. However, the speaker will compose his or her views and language only at the moment of delivery. So the speaker may use an outline to guide him through his speech to achieve better organization and to avoid leaving out details. It is the method that most lecturers and teachers use. Okay? So which means to say that before the competition will begin, you already are aware of the topics which are covered in the competition. However, you do not know for yet which question you will be asked, because the composition of your answer will only be during the moment of your delivery. But in most of the competitions that you may have observed in schools during literary competition or speech fest, in an extemporaneous speech, the contestant is given 3 minutes to study the question and 3 minutes to deliver the speech. Maybe you may have noticed that. That can also be one way of delivering an extemporaneous speech in a competition. However, those topics may have been given to the participants way ahead of time. to give our participants the idea as to what topics or issues they need to study on or they need to focus on. And again, as I mentioned, this can be a method that most lecturers and teachers use. So that includes me. So when I deliver lessons, usually I only study it like a few minutes before the class, and then I deliver the lesson. But of course, it's very important that as a teacher or as a lecturer or as a contestant in whatever competition, even though you are given only 3 minutes, you are still given 3 minutes to study your topic. It's very important that you have the background of the topic. Otherwise, it would not be easy for you. It would not be spontaneous. You cannot explain your topic spontaneously unless you have a thorough knowledge or comprehensive knowledge of the topic. That is why it is very important for teachers or for speakers or for the contestants in whatever competition you're joining in as far as extemporaneous speaking is concerned, that you have a background of the topic that you will be delivering. One weakness is that if the speaker is not spontaneous because he has to formulate his sentences while he is speaking. So therefore, the quality of the delivery is affected, just like what happened with, or what will happen with impromptu speeches. So if you're not really spontaneous, if you are not witty, so if you're not witty, it would be very difficult for you to deliver your speech spontaneously. So maybe if you're not witty, then you would really settle for read or memorize speech. But if you're witty, then do the impromptu or extemporaneous speeches. These speeches would test your ability to think fast and also to organize your thoughts clearly in a very short span of time. So that would be a real challenge for you that you can overcome if you practice yourself. Okay? So that would be all for our discussion tonight. I would like to ask you here, um, if you have some essential understanding on the topic that we have discussed, can you tell me one thing that you have learned from our lesson today? Okay, can you share it in the chat box? Please type it in the chat box. Please give me one important lesson that you have learned from tonight's discussion. Okay, anything? Okay, so I hope you are typing now. While others are typing their one significant learning, I want others also to type one question that they would like to ask about the topic that we have discussed tonight. So you can also type one essential learning and one essential question. Okay, so please give me one essential learning or one essential question. And then after that, okay, this is your question. If you were to choose one type of speech according to delivery, which speech or which type would you choose and why? Okay. So this would be our last question. So you can choose from the three questions. From the three activities. Please choose one. Which one do you want to answer? One essential learning, one essential question, or one essential understanding? One question, the last question there. Okay, please type it in the chat box. Okay, I'm still waiting now. Okay, I give you more or less maybe 3 minutes to process it. Okay, so I hope you can. Okay, you can think of an answer. Okay, so Let me see. Okay, so we have already an answer here from Jeremy. Okay, so according to Jeremy, one of the important lesson I learned tonight is in persuasive speech. If you want to persuade your audience, you must be the leading evidence of what you've shared in order for you to get the appeal of your audience. That is right. Because in persuasive speech, you appeal to your audience. You use here the pathos, right? So in Aristotle's form of proof, pathos is very important here. So which means that when you try to convince others, you need also to be a living example of what you are as a person, right? So it's kind of appealing to the emotions. So when you appeal to the emotions, you need to be a living example of your speech. It's very hard to persuade someone to believe in you if you are not even that person yourself. So which means that if you promote have you noticed that in advertisements that if you have a long hair, normally you can be a model for a shampoo, right? If you have a white skin, even if you're not using that particular product, you can be a model of a lotion, for example. Why? Because you are a living example of that. So to persuade others, you have to be that person yourself first. According to Rachel Piñaflor, I learned that when delivering a public speech, you should know your weaknesses first. That's correct. Because if you do not know your weaknesses and strengths, it would be very hard for you to improve yourself. First, you have to admit, pangit akong magsalita, no? Or halimbawa, I am not good at memorizing things. So therefore, I will settle with either read speech or impromptu or extemporaneous. So first, you have to know your weakness. That is right. After knowing your weakness, you have to know also your strength. Because only from knowing your weaknesses and strengths, you would be able to deliver a very good speech. Okay? So according to Jamaica, I would like to choose information speech to expand knowledge and to give information to all. Okay, so if she is, according to her, if she is to deliver her speech or a